Today is March the 4th, Wednesday, and as I always have been saying, once again, another busy day up on the Hill. Well, today what we had going on within the House was the hearing specifically of Senate bills. So let's jump right into that. The first bill that we had that came up this afternoon session was SB 111. Interesting bill. It's one of the only bills that our Speaker of the House is actually running this year. This thing is a monster, right? 11,393 lines. Some of those lines that are a little bit interesting, let's look at lines 2,840 through 42 that say, if the governor is not satisfied with a sufficient number of the candidates presented by the nominating committee to make the required number of appointments, the governor may request that the committee nominate additional candidates. Again, what this was trying to do here is make sure that the governor likes who the legislation is sending their way to be part of this new committee of candidates that's going to be headed out by, let's back up a second. So what this bill is doing is it's now going to be combining the 8 tech schools within the state-run programs, and the 8 four-year higher ed or four-year college universities. And the way that they want to do that is to make sure that people can transfer back and forth, that there's a better emphasis on the techs and all of the degrees that are available from those types of schools, as well as making sure that credits can flow quite a bit easily between them as students are always changing career paths and things of that nature. So looks like a good bill on the outside. It flew through with 100% satisfaction and approval. This was, again, an interesting line where the governor, if he's just not satisfied, then you have to send him some new people. So in this, it was interesting because, again, there's going to be one unified board for higher education. That's never happened in the state. In fact, many legislators were calling this the most important legislation of the 2020 session. They were also going to add students and members at large to manage it. It was going to create definitive rules for this board and exactly how it's going to work. It's going to establish clear goals and missions for all 16 institutions and one system, in the hopes of eliminating redundancy, sharing systems and things of that nature. For me, it sounded a lot like unified police, which on the outside seems very nice because you're sharing and everything looks good, but in its heart, your city is no longer represented by its own police force. Ergo, it's now just a member of a board as relates to how they want to run the police under that unified police setting. Now, why do I mention that? Because to me, this particular bill screams to be the same. What really sets colleges and universities apart as they are today is that individuality, is the location, and the people that attend and exactly what they want to do there. So will this bill work? Well, all of the legislators flat admitted, we're going to keep a close eye on this. We're ready to come back in a year or two and revisit this. So for those legislators that really like to say, hey, local first, and let's give it back to the local, this was kind of a fail in my humble opinion, because it was removing the opportunity for the universities and the tech schools to really kind of live in their own world, have their own governing bodies, have their own representation. So I get both sides, but again, I never have liked a bill where it's this big, and in order to figure out exactly what it is, we pass the darn thing only to play cleanup for the next 5, 10, whatever amount of time. So there was that. We had some other things that came up, and as far as on the House floor, there were only 19 bills heard. A lot of that had to do with the fact that the Senator Bramble's bill came up, and this is the fetal remains bill, SB 67. So there on the House floor, it ended up passing 54 to 13. All 13 were Democrats, all 54 were Republicans, so right down party lines, that continuation of the partisan vote on the topic of abortion. One of the most interesting things that came up to me was one of the representatives actually argued against the bill by saying, why would we bury the fetal remains when we do not bury an amputated limb? This is where we've gotten. We're now thinking that the unborn is the equivalent of an amputated limb or pinky or whatever. I just could not fathom it, and it just shows why we really need to continue to drive home the real message of what abortion is. Abortion is not removing a limb. Abortion is killing of an unborn, precious human person. And we do not do that for the reasons that elective abortion espouses. We had SB 109, and that was the new state construction set aside for art amendments. Thought this one was going to be kind of simple, turned into a little bit of a fiasco. It was going to say, or it does say, it will now limit any new construction when you go to put artwork in it and your statues and other things to beautify the interior of the building. It used to be you could spend 1% of the total bill. So if you had something that was a $100 million building, which isn't that hard to do in a government project, $1 million could be allocated and spent towards art. Now that limit is $200K. We also had SB 127. You could also call this the Stevens-Henniger College Bill. What this is doing is it's going all the way back to 2012 when the legislature came out and said all nursing programs within the state of Utah need to be accredited and teach a certain requirement in order for people to graduate and have that nursing degree and have that qualify within the state. Well, Stevens-Henniger, even though it's been 8 years, hasn't been able to get it done. So this bill actually gives them another 1.5 years to get that done for that accreditation. We had 19 new bills that also came up. One of those bills that I wanted to touch on is, again, another red flag bill. This one run by a Representative Malloy, and it's under the Firearms Safe Harbor Amendments. Now, Malloy's already gotten a Second Amendment bill through, and this one, let's look at it. I don't want to put words in the good representative's mouth. Lines 34 through 37 state this: a cohabitant or owner cohabitant, there's the change, may voluntarily commit a firearm to a law enforcement agency, new change coming up, or request that a law enforcement officer receive a firearm. So now, let's say someone who is a cohabitant at my residence, and if they have whatever feelings or that's in their mind about me, they can now contact the police, and the police would come and remove firearms based on that cohabitant's recommendation. Again, think about this with all that goes on in our community, with people getting upset at one another, with the rampant divorce rate and other things that can go on. The opportunity to really weaponize this bill into something that it really shouldn't be. Again, Second Amendment shall not be infringed. We also have HB 464, and this is a ticket reseller amendment. This one made me just stop and go, wow. Literally, wow. This is where we are at within the legislative process. Let me read you these lines. You tell me what you think. It says, it is unlawful for a person to accept payment for a ticket and not deliver to the consumer who purchases the ticket a ticket that reflects the transaction to which both parties agreed. Crazy to me. It's like, hey, you bought bread and you should be able to get bread. You bought the ticket, you should be able to get the ticket. But this is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. This is the community that we live in, where this is the legislation that, even though we only have 45 days, and even though legislators are so stressed for time, and even though they cannot get anything done up there, they have time for this. So just think about that one for a moment. Again, thank you as always for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.